Welcome everyone to today's podcast, The Engineer Whisperer Transitioned into a Director Role. And today I'm welcoming Erin to the podcast. Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. And as we begin, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Erin Chase. I'm currently the Director of Operational Excellence and Digital Manufacturing Transformation at Johnson Controls. Prior to Johnson Controls, I supported a business in Corning, as well as spent 14 years with John Deere in numerous different roles, from environment, health, and safety to labor relations, operations, and even supply management. So it's been a fun journey so far.
Yes, you have a lot of experience to pull from, as I'm going to ask you lots of questions about your transition. So, as we begin, tell us maybe for the context, was becoming a director, a leader of leaders, always part of your development plan? Or was it
When
something that somebody invited you in?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't always part of my development plan, but it was in there early. And it's kind of an interesting story how I got into my development plan. I had a really good leader that said, I'd like to have a development conversation with you. And I said, okay. And so we had the conversation. He goes, what do you want to be in 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years? And I was like, ooh, I don't know. In my heart, I kind of knew, like, I want to be that person, which was actually a director level position, but I didn't want to say it out loud because I was like, I don't know how to get from here to there. And she's like, well, I'm not going to have another conversation with you until you tell me what that like future goal is. And it almost like forced the issue. And then I put it out to her, and it was really liberating actually to like put it out into space and be like, I want to be that person. And from there we talked about, okay, let's research some of their skills and capabilities, and then let's map a path for you that allows you to get those skills and competencies and capabilities to put you in a position that maybe you could get there. And it really helped structure how I thought about development throughout my whole career really early on. So I'm very thankful to have had that opportunity and have that leader specifically kind of call me out and say, you need to put that token out there. And we're not going to talk about what year and exactly the details, but we're going to talk about like skills and capabilities. And it was kind of transformational for me and how I thought about developing and what I wanted to be when I grew up, essentially.
Oh, so I'm curious, did you have like a name where you said that I want to be like that? Did you have a role model, a mentor or a director in mind when you answered, or was more just on the responsibility side that I wanted to be somebody who has these responsibilities?
Yeah, so I certainly had mentors along the way, and I had really good leaders that I would take like pieces of what they did. But in this case, for me, it was the scope of the role. Like, I want to be that person, not, and it was a product line director role, which has marketing, engineering, the manufacturing piece, or it did back then. I think it's changed over time now, but it was really, I want to kind of have a little mini business to run. So
Oh.
it could be any of the businesses, but I wanted to have like a little mini business of my own, or feeling like it was my own to run within the organization. So for me, it was the role, not necessarily the person.
Hmm. Well, let me just ask one more question because I think a lot of people struggle with this, and especially young engineers who start their careers when someone would ask them that question, just like you got asked by your leader. Um, what made you get over the fear of, or I guess with the fear to answer it? Like, what was your? Do you remember your motivation of okay, I'm gonna say it. Just whatever happens, I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, well, part of it is I'm a person that if something scares me, then I feel like if I hear like I can't in my mind, then I have to do it. Like, it's almost a call to action for me. So in this case, I was like, I can't say that I'm not good enough. I'm like, am I going to chicken out for the first time? Like, for one of the first times in my life, am I going to miss this opportunity because I'm too scared? And even though I was scared, I mean, I was very much like feeling like I had no right to even put that out into space at the point where I was at in my career. And I just was like, I don't want to miss this opportunity to have this next conversation. So for her saying, I'm not going to have another conversation with you until you tell me what that is, because then that makes it more value added for both of us. Right. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to miss that opportunity. And I also didn't want to let myself down by being too scared to try something new, especially since she opened the door.
Yes.
So
Mm.
for me, that was basically, it's always been like my war cry for myself. If I hear myself say I can't do that, because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to put a stop on myself. I can say I choose to not do this, which is different than I can't. And
Yes.
so for me, it was I chose to take the step even though it was scary.
I love that self-awareness piece. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I love how you put a strategy on the self-talk, the negative self-talk that we all struggle with. So thank you. All right, so fast forward, you are about to transition into the role that back then you said you wanted, um, call it director role. What came easy to you?
Okay, so the role that I'm in right now is not necessarily the one that I wanted. So yes, it's a director position, but it's a little different. But what I learned along the journey is that this is what I love to do. So actually, my dream changed from back then to what I want to now. So still kind of getting to that point in the organization,
Mhm.
but what that role was is different, and I'm very happy. But for me, when I got this director position, it was actually with a new company. So it was one of those things I needed to move companies, and I had the opportunity to do this, was super excited. But at the same point, I was wondering, okay, how do I do this well? Because it was a company where I was going to be remote. I didn't know anybody. I mean, just going in flat blind and into a role that they had essentially created for me. It didn't exist. It wasn't one that I applied for.
Yeah.
And so you put all of that together and you're going, how is this going to work? How can I build a network? How can I leverage, like, everything that I knew how to do was going to be different here. So I took some time. One, there's a few things that I always do. So I always read through the first 90 days anytime I change roles. So whether it's internally in a company that I know, or now I've switched companies now twice, but I always read through that because it resets my mind on kind of what I need to think about. And then I'm actually reading another book too, like Your Next Move, and it's a build on the first 90 days. So that gives me a perspective in putting together a game plan for how I want to approach my first couple months, and how I set up who I need to meet with, the conversations I need to have, the questions that I need to ask, most importantly. And then I also had a good teammate, and it was actually for a different position, not at a director role, but I applied it to this. And he's like, remember, in the role that you're in, when you speak, people will listen and they will go do, whether that's what you meant or not. And so
Yes.
for me, I try to be collaborative, and I love going back and forth with people on what about this idea, or this or that. And from that kind of single point in time, I always made sure to feel like, hey, just so you know, I'm not telling you that you need to go do these things. I'm, we're iterating and I'm trying to figure out what the right thing might be, but I'm really just looking for your feedback. And if you want to go try it and you think it's the right thing for you, and go ahead. If it's something I want you to do, I'm going to tell you that.
Mm.
So I also try to set that expectation early, that that's part of my personality. And I like to get smart people in the room and ask the right questions to get them talking, and almost figure out what to do from there. But a lot of times I'm asking a question because I genuinely want to hear from them and put that together, not because I want them to take an action from that question. So that's something else where I've learned to do manager assimilation, and kind of lay out, like, what do I need to know about you? What do I need to know about this team? What do I need to know about this company? And then what do you want to know about me? And by the way, here's a few things that I'd like to share with you about how I work, and I will do the best I can to adapt to you. But also realize, if I do some of these things, it's more just my natural self coming out. And, here's kind of how you can manage it. And also, like, I want feedback. So I open that door and try to make it really comfortable for people to tell me, like, when I need to adjust and back off, because then it never gets bad. So I think because of those things, I've always been able to maintain good relationships and also create new relationships with people across the organization.
Tell me a little bit more about and this is what I want you to know about me, because I love personally that sentence and that conversation starter myself when I discovered it. And like, this is so powerful. um and at the same time, when I first that I had a blank page, like, okay, well, what do I want people to know about me? So it's that other, the fear side. So how did you decide what to write on your list, what to share at the beginning with someone? Because time is limited. Can't share everything. So yeah, give us a few insights on how you've done it.
So, one, I try to share things on the personal side that connect. So, I'm a mom, so I'm going to share that. Like, I usually joke I've got 3 teenage daughters, so therefore gray hairs sometimes, depending on what time of like how the weeks fall, you may see me with gray hair, but that's because I've got 3 teenagers. So I can instantly relate to some of the parents in the room, men and women. And then I kind of share a little bit about my background. I grew up on a farm. So even though they kind of see me with different roles and things like that, I talk about being the oldest kid on the farm and you got to fix it before dad found out. And a lot of people can tend to relate to that, especially in manufacturing. And so I kind of share that anecdotally, but it says a lot about my background and how I approach things. I think when you can
Yeah,
give a little bit of something that kind of shaped who you are at the core.
yeah,
And then on the work standpoint, I go back. I love the disc assessment. It's something that I use in we did a deep dive in my master's program. I have an MBA, but it was a really interesting class because everything that we did and all of the case studies that we did, we had to apply how our personality maybe helped shape how we approached the problem or approached the team in the case study. And I just found that super valuable. So I used to have a whiteboard in my office back when I wasn't remote. And I had my team members, the people that worked for me, all have their name on my whiteboard and then their disc assessment piece. So it would be a reminder to me before a one-on-one, like how I needed to adapt to help meet their needs. But I would also share, hey, I'm a DI. That may not be anything to you if you've never done this, but here's some of like the key pieces of my personality. And I'll actually reference back to that. Now I think it might have changed slightly over time, but at the core, it's fairly accurate. And I'm like, so here's some of the things. I'm an 80% person. If this table is 80% confident that something's gonna work, then we're gonna go try it. Like I don't need 100%. I don't need 25 different analysis. I just want to be like, I think this is going to work. Let's manage the risk and let's go do it. So I try to bring that piece in and give them a few bullet points, but also let them know, I'm not adverse to failure. I want you to try because I don't see it as failure. I see it as, okay, that's not working the way we think. What are we going to do to try something different? And we just keep retrying until it works. And that's my preferred style.
yeah,
So I think that's important to know too, because people that are really data driven, like if there's a person that loves data, then guess what? When I have to do data driven stuff, I'm gonna be like, you like doing this stuff. Would you mind leading this? Because it's not my strength. I can, but if I have somebody that likes to do it and that's their strength, I'm gonna use that. So
yeah.
that's some of what I like to try to manage with the team and leverage the talent that I have, but also, enable me to drive with the strengths that I have and not necessarily try to keep focusing on the weaknesses all the time. I've got I've got great people typically around me that are much better than me in the areas that I'm the weakest, and I just let them run.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's it's something that I encourage engineers to do too. The more you find out about yourself, the more you can then share with your team as a leader so that they will understand you better. It's almost like breaking this paradigm that I have to understand my team first, but it's, in my opinion, understand yourself as a leader so that you can open up the door as it happened to you too, and invite your team into conversations where they say, oh, I never thought about that, or oh, okay, yeah, it's time to do that, do the hard thing right now, like figure out kind of my goal for the next 15, 20 years. But you need that leader who pushes you just enough so that you, despite the fear, you do it with the fear. Oh, I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Erin. Now, What about something challenging in your transition? Tell us about that.
I think probably one of the more challenging things, and part of it was because it was a new organization, was figuring out where I fit. So in previous companies, when you were a director role, it was like a certain level and you had a certain budget and you had certain, just kind of certain roles, responsibilities, accountability when you got up to that level. So coming in as a director into this new organization, what my expectations were and what was actually there was different. So not a bad different, but I really had to take it in and be like, wow, I'm talking to VPs, but actually like they're my buddies and we're gonna work together. And then like, and then there's these other directors too, and we're all gonna be buddies and we're gonna work together. And so it I realized really quickly that the politics were not around the job titles. Now, some people made it like that, and you're going to have some people like that in every organization. Like, I've made it to this level, so I'm above, blah, blah, blah. I'm very blessed right now where I work that we don't have that. It's very much, everybody's kind of working together and doesn't matter who you are. And it's more about the roles and responsibilities. So I think it's important to read the political landscape, but also if you're changing companies and moving into a director level role, I would say ask a lot of questions about roles, responsibilities, expectation, budget, team, kind of how this role has worked before. Those are core questions that um, some of I had asked some of those questions, but I think I would have gone a little bit deeper knowing what I know now. But reality is, at the end of the day, I still would have made the same decision and would have had the exact same experience, which was all pretty positive.
Mm. It sounds like the fitting in, as you said, the challenge was fitting in as of understanding how you can fit in so that you create impact together with others. I guess with those who are not playing the political
Yeah.
game that hard, but those who want to understand their roles and your role, and then together how you can improve things and collaborate. Again, that collaboration that you mentioned before. Hmm, I see. Well, was anything surprising in your transition?
I think for me, it was just again, kind of going back to the structure and the budget and here's all the things we want you to get done, but like the how wasn't really planned out. And so like what it was one thing, but then you kind of have to ask for every little thing. And there wasn't a budget that matched the expectations. So again, it's more, okay, this is what you want me to do. And here's the other questions I need to ask because in order for me to get this done, here's what I think I'm going to need, or I need to understand these things so I can figure out how to work around it or work with the constraints and understanding the scope. So, I mean, my first 90 days were insane. I didn't know that I could do as much change. It still blows my mind. I just remember sitting there and like looking at my 90-day plan going, wow, I did what I thought I could do in 90 days in like 20. I mean, it was incredibly insane, but it was, you're going to change this, you're going to do that. And I had a really good leader who was all about it, which is why he brought me on board, which is why the role was set up the way that it was. And it was like, she's here, here's what she's doing, the end.
So, so
And
wait,
it
the
was
90
great.
day plan, was that something that you put together for yourself or was that handed to you?
No, it's something I put together.
Oh, is that something that you normally do or was this for the first time?
No, I always do. So I kind of mentioned at the beginning, I didn't go into details, but the first 90 days book, one, I've read it, but I typically just skim through it and look at kind of the chapter headings and some of the key questions in that book.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry. Okay, so you're
yeah,
okay, you're following the book. Okay, I thought that you created
yep.
your own plan. Okay, you're using
Yeah.
the
So kind
book.
of in the 90-day plan, but I
I see.
do like, I ask a few key questions regardless of the role. Like, what does success look like? And I ask that, like, who are the key stakeholders? And then I ask each of those stakeholders, what does success look like for you when you think about the job that I'm in?
I see.
And those two questions are golden. And it doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor, if you're a manager, if you're going into a director role, if you're going to be a vice president. I think those are the core questions. And even in an interview, those are the questions I ask always.
Yeah, and those are the questions that someone, it takes time and intention to answer them. You need your, I call it, you need your mind and your heart for for those, because you really have to connect the two, um, so people can hear your passion and kind of your why together with your how and the what. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Now I understand. Okay, so the 90-day, the book, and then yeah, your plan. Got it. Okay, so going back to you were surprised how capable you were, that you have done the 90-day plan in less than. So then tell me, what mindset shift did you go through as you saw, okay, well, I'm kind of done with my plan. Now what? And what else is missing? And or is there a gap? Or where did you go from there?
Yeah, I think for me, it was more like the speed of change. So I was like leading a fairly significant change as well as like starting up another focus area. So it's kind of two different dynamics of like change this whole process and system globally and then start this whole thing over here globally. So I've got two sides of what I do. But for me, it was being uncomfortable with the pace of change because in the organizations I'd worked with before, pretty established, and there was a process and who you talk to and who you got on board and kind of like leading them to the water. And I personally like having people put their idea on the table, even if it's me walking them to the end result that I would like, but being able to like guide them to find that end result on their own. And in this case, it was okay, in the next like 5 months, you need to have this whole process rerun, like completely tear it down and rebuild it, and then execute it and deliver it out to all of the global teams.
Wow.
And I was just really uncomfortable because I was taking the work that a lot of people had done and completely changing it. And I'm like politically, emotional, like there's just going to be some of that angst. And what I was surprised with is one, the organization was actually like they're so used to change that some of the walls that I expected were not there. But then it was also for me going, okay, who is the people that are most tied into this, even if their role isn't critical for what I'm doing now because their role has changed, but who are the people that I need to at least get to know on a personal level so they know me personally. So it's not like, oh, she's just changing that. And you can kind of disparage the role if you don't know the person. And so for me, I tried to make sure that I made those connections personally and open the door for them to give me feedback or if there's things that they didn't like or that they thought was just flat wrong. I wanted to make sure early on that I gave them the chance to come to me because I knew I wasn't going to have the chance to go to them as often or as much as I really would have wanted had I had more
Yeah.
time. So I was deliberate in building some of those relationships, but also understanding like what was their perspective, what works, what doesn't, what are some of the things that they would want to keep and to change. And so then in my communications back with the group, I would say, here's the great things that we kept and then we just built on it. Here's the things that we changed, but we did it because we heard, you know, X, Y, and Z. And so I tried to link that back in the communications and always be gracious in what was, and grateful to the people, which I genuinely am. But then kind of circle that back around to make sure it wasn't like it's not like, oh, I'm better, I'm changing this and because I'm so much better than the work that was done. And so being really cognizant
Yeah.
of how you present things and making sure that you like at your core have that humbleness but also that leadership, so I can be confident and humble at the same time. And I think that's really important in a director role to be able to do both because you should be getting your boots dirty tactically but also being able to lead strategically. It's almost one of those, I kind of look at it as almost a transition role. And you need to be able to do both, but be humble enough and confident enough to achieve that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. In my transition work too, yes, I highlighted that part of celebrating the past and celebrating those who got us where we are right now, because without them we wouldn't be here. And that it works in one-on-one and in a group and then in an organization. And then to yes I really believe that I call those flaggers the ones that you're talking about, to identify those who are out there, who care so much about the change and the organization and the value, and stand for the mission of the company, that they are willing to flag the leader for, okay, I don't know, slow down, go faster, something. So those comments that are so important in order to then pay attention to direction changes or whatever comes along. So yeah, these are super cool tactics. Erin, thanks for sharing. Um, and and as we're getting close to our end, I'm curious, is there a transition that you're going through right now, and what's a mindset shift that you're working on currently?
Yes, I'm actually working on transitioning out of my current company and into a new company. It's semi-public. I think everybody at my current company knows because I've been doing the best I can to make sure that I leave things in a good spot. So I think one, if you are transitioning out of a role, even if it's within the same company, even doing that with grace, I think is really important. And it becomes part of your brand that you leave behind. And you always want to leave people saying positive things in your wake, even if they're disappointed in the decision that you made. So I think that
Yeah.
is good. And making sure that I elevate the people that deserve to be elevated and, share perspectives and do what I can to leave it in a good spot. And then going into my new role, so I've always been in Fortune 500 companies. I've been in three now. My new role is going to be a much smaller private equity um, firm or private equity owned company. So it's going to be significantly different. So the pace of change, the roles and responsibilities, the accountability, it's just going to be a massive, massive shift. And I know that. I don't know what exactly the shift is going to be like, but I know it's going to be a big change.
I love how you say
And
that like, it
yeah,
comes with that weight.
yeah. So back to what you said earlier, it's even reflecting on myself and saying, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Here's what I know today because I did ask a lot of good questions throughout the conversations I had within this company about what their challenges are, what are they looking for, what does good look like in this role, as well as just understanding kind of how the team works. And so because of that information, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I fit in most quickly? And I feel like I've got a good plan, but I'm still doing the first 90 days. But then I found this other book called Master Your Next Move, which I think is actually really great as well. And it's a perfect book, I think, for more of like a director and above transition. There's some in there for managers, but it really gets into some of the business questions to ask. And depending on which type of transition it is, some of the things that you need to think about that would be different than the transitions you've had before. So for me, going from large Fortune 500 to a smaller company, it would be a very similar jump in transition if I went from a smaller company to a Fortune 500, just very different. So understanding where can I get that insight? What research can I do to learn about like pitfalls, lessons learned, things that other people have experienced making a similar change and what they wish they would have known. So I'm spending my time doing some of that and putting together my, like, again, just my personal plan of I literally have, here's what I'm going to do the first 90 days. Here's the people I need to meet. Here's my team. What can I learn about them on LinkedIn? How do I set this up? Who can facilitate a manager assimilation for me? I've got that lined up. So I'm putting together my plan of action and how I'm going to try to adapt, but most importantly, how I'm going to learn about that new company and how they do things because it's going to be a much bigger transition for me than I've had in the past. Even though it's similar and smaller, it's going to be bigger and more challenging. I have a feeling. We'll see. I could be completely wrong,
So
but
Erin, for those who haven't read the book, The First 90 Day, what is a mindset shift that, yeah, how would you describe an overall kind of mindset shift that you are entering as you start day one and then all through 90 days? Because I think that that is what I would like people to get, to leave with that message of, even if you haven't read the book, you don't know what Erin is talking about right now. Um, but there's a mindset shift in that book, that, what is it for you that you kind of took away and then personalized it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about removing my like bias and assumptions
Okay.
because especially when you move in a company, because I've done some lateral roles too, which I think are really important. So it's not always up, but lateral. And even in the lateral roles with the same company, I found good things in there. So I might know all of the players, like I might know the people that I should know, but usually there's some outliers that the questions that the book asks or things that it makes I'm like, oh, I haven't connected with that person in over a year. Maybe because I'm making this change, I should. So for me, it helps set my mind on who are the people I'm not thinking about. And then from there, the other piece that I really like are, what's some of the questions that I need to ask differently because I've got this hat on or I'm in this role. So it might be questions I'm comfortable with or know the answer with in my current role, but how do I need to apply that? What version of this question do I need to ask in this new role? So it almost takes me back to like, oh yeah, I thought about that when I took this role 3 years ago, but I haven't really thought about that since. And most importantly, like who can I reach out in my network to, like almost a reconnection point to
Yes.
be like, hey, or what's the connection I need to build? Who do I find in this organization? So it almost gives me a purpose of I need to find a person that's smart in this area. I need to find a person that might have this answer. And I've got a purposeful question to ask them that's going to help me be
Yes.
successful. But it opens the door for me to go ask instead of like, can I have a one-on-one? Like I just like want to meet you, which is great. But then if you can say, hey, I'd really like to learn about this and I think you can help me. It's a it's a really easy yes. And everybody says yes to those type of things because they're like, oh, you're new in your role and thanks for thinking of me and reaching out. And it's a different level of it. It almost elevates the importance of the conversation. They're like, I would like to learn this from you, or could you share your perspective? It elevates them
Yes.
in terms of like how you think of them and
Yes.
reminds them of what you do think of them. Or maybe just shares that, hey, this person thinks that I can help them, which is great. And it gives a good door for a friendship.
The visual that came to my mind is that you put, and you have purple for those who are not watching the on the video, she has purple on, that you put on your purple glasses, just so make it fun here. So you put on your purple glasses and almost like you start seeing, noticing people kind of for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that opportunity to, because if I'm on the other side, I'm the one who is receiving a new leader in on my team. um no, I wanna, and I think we all can relate to this, I want to be seen and heard by my leader as soon as possible. it's just
Yep.
how we are, we humans, so that I know how I can then be the best employee that I can be and team player. So that's the visual that came to my mind, that what you might be doing. A really cool fun thing is you put on your glasses and you start seeing all these cool people around, and you also tell them that you see them and you give them an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to meet you. I mean, we talk about them as, I talk about with engineers, as, these are the fundamental transitional steps for someone to then build a and manage a successful change as they are going through, and also to help everybody else around them, the team or the organization, who are involved, to go through it with them. So again, thank you very much for sharing all this with us. And as we are at the end of the podcast, I want to hand you the mic back to close us out with, what would you like to leave us with today, Aaron?
I think the biggest thing for me to leave you with is it's all about the people. So you can be the best engineer, the best accountant, like the best whatever you are. But if you don't figure out the people side, you will never be seen as the best and you never actually will be the best in your role. So I just say don't underestimate the value of people up, down, and across in your organization and really make a concerted effort. You probably didn't get this from me, but I'm naturally an introvert. So going out and like having these conversations and doing these things is, it's not the easiest for me. Now I've gotten used to it over time, but if I can do it, you can do it. And make sure that you figure out who those people are that can help you be successful, whether it's because a different perspective than you, whether it's a different experience than you, whether they've got different skills and capabilities than you, but leverage those people and figure out like when to bring them to the table. And people want to do a good job together, and they want people that want them at the table. So the more you can do that, the more successful you will be.
If you tell people you believe in them and you want to invest in them, they're gonna step up. They're gonna always step
Absolutely.
up. So, well, on that note, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being an awesome guest today and spending time with me. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. This was fun.